I didn't know what I was bringing home that day. It seemed so harmless at first, a small, white plush toy tucked away on the bottom shelf of a thrift store. The kind of thing you glance at and think, cute, before moving on to something more practical. But there was something about her, something that made my fingers twitch as they closed around the soft fabric. Maybe it was the way she stared up at me with those blank, unblinking eyes, or how unnervingly perfect she looked despite being surrounded by dust-covered junk. She wasn't just clean, she was pristine, like she'd never been touched. Not even once. When I picked her up, the air shifted. It wasn't dramatic, nothing that would make you scream or drop her immediately. No, it was subtler than that. A chill ran down my spine, but I told myself it was ridiculous. This was Hello Kitty, for God's sake. The same character plastered on lunchboxes and backpacks since I was a kid. What could possibly be wrong with her? Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I shouldn't take her home. And yet, I did. Later that night, curiosity got the better of me. I turned her over in my hands, inspecting every inch of her tiny body. That's when I found it, the tag. At first glance, it looked normal enough. The usual care instructions, the Sanrio logo. But then, scrawled faintly in black ink along the edge, were two words that stopped my breath cold. She knows. I froze, staring at the phrase as if it might disappear if I blinked. Who wrote it? Why? And most importantly, what did she know? The questions clawed at the back of my mind, refusing to let go. I tried convincing myself it was some prank, a cruel joke meant to unsettle whoever bought her next. But deep down, I knew better. Deep down, I felt like I'd stumbled onto something I wasn't supposed to see. The next morning, I couldn't stop thinking about those two words. She knows. They gnawed at me like a splinter buried too deep to remove. I told myself it was just a coincidence, a random act of vandalism on a mass-produced toy. But part of me, the part that woke up sweating from dreams I couldn't remember, knew better. So, I did what anyone would do when faced with something they didn't understand. I started researching. I began with the basics, digging into the history of Sanrio and Hello Kitty herself. What I found was unsettling. Hello Kitty wasn't born out of some whimsical desire to create joy. She was created in 1974 as a marketing tool, a way to sell products. Her real name is Kitty White, and according to official lore, she's a British schoolgirl who lives in London with her parents and twin sister Mimi. Sounds innocent enough, right? Except for one glaring detail. She doesn't have a mouth. At first glance, it's easy to dismiss this as a design choice, a stylistic quirk meant to make her more universal. After all, without a mouth, she can't speak any specific language, which makes her accessible to everyone. But the longer I thought about it, the more it bothered me. Why would you create a character who can't express herself? Who can't laugh, cry, scream, or even smile properly? It felt hollow, like staring into a void wrapped in pink bows and pastel colors. And then there's the fact that no one really knows why she doesn't have a mouth. Officially, Sanrio claims it's because she speaks through her heart. But unofficially, Let's just say the internet has its theories. Some people believe her lack of a mouth symbolizes emptiness, a blank slate designed to absorb whatever emotions you project onto her. Others claim it's proof she's not alive, not truly. But that doesn't mean she isn't aware. There are darker whispers too, urban legends about cursed merchandise and haunted dolls. One story stuck with me. A girl who owned a Hello Kitty keychain said it started moving on its own, always pointing toward her bedroom door at night. Another mentioned an old plushie that seemed to grow heavier over time, until one day it vanished entirely. These were just fragments, scattered pieces of a puzzle I couldn't quite put together. But they made my skin crawl all the same. As I scrolled through forums and Reddit threads, I noticed something else. People kept mentioning how unnatural her world felt. Everything about Hello Kitty's universe is impossibly perfect. Bright skis, smiling animals, endless sunshine. Nothing decays, nothing ages, nothing changes. Even the food looks fake, like plastic props in a diner window display. It's charming on the surface, sure, but if you stare long enough, it starts to feel wrong. Like someone took a picture of happiness and stretched it too thin, leaving cracks beneath. That's when I realized I wasn't alone in feeling uneasy. A few days later, I brought it up with my friends during lunch. At first, they laughed, calling me paranoid. "It's just a cartoon," Sarah said, rolling her eyes. "You're reading too much into it." But when I pressed them, asking if they'd ever noticed anything strange about Hello Kitty, their smiles faltered. Jake admitted he used to have a pencil case with her face on it, and every time he opened it, he swore he heard a faint whisper. Mia confessed she once saw a Hello Kitty sticker peel itself off her notebook and land face down on the floor. Neither could explain what happened, and neither wanted to talk about it after that. By the end of the conversation, I felt worse than before. Not because of what they said, but because of what they didn't say. The way their voices dropped when they described their experiences, like they were afraid of being overheard. Like they knew something I didn't, something dangerous. And then it hit me, the realization that maybe this wasn't just about a creepy plush toy. Maybe it was bigger than that. Maybe Hello Kitty wasn't just watching me. Maybe she was watching all of us. It started with the dreams. Vivid, suffocating nightmares that felt more real than anything I'd ever experienced. In them, I was always alone in an endless field of white, no horizon, no sky, just blankness stretching infinitely in every direction. And then she would appear. Hello Kitty, sitting cross-legged a few feet away, her head tilted slightly as if studying me. Her bow seemed brighter here, almost glowing, and her eyes, they weren't empty anymore. They were sharp, calculating, like she could see straight through me. Every time I tried to move, my body refused to obey, leaving me frozen while she stared. Silent, unblinking. And then she smiled, not the way she's supposed to. That's when I'd wake up, gasping for air, drenched in sweat. The first few times, I told myself it was stress or exhaustion, but deep down, I knew better. Each dream left me feeling hollow, like something inside me had been scraped away bit by bit. By the third night, I couldn't ignore it anymore. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. The waking world wasn't much better. At first, the changes were small, easy to dismiss as coincidence, like how the lights in my apartment began flickering whenever I touched the plush toy, or how my phone would buzz incessantly late at night, only for there to be no notifications when I checked. But soon, the anomalies grew harder to explain away. Once, I woke up to find the toy sitting on my pillow next to me, even though I was certain I'd left it on the bookshelf before going to bed. Another time, I heard faint footsteps packing outside my bedroom door, though I lived alone. When I opened the door, nothing was there except the plush toy lying innocently in the hallway, its glassy eyes reflecting the dim light. I tried talking to my friends about it again, hoping someone might offer some kind of rational explanation. Instead, they laughed it off. "You're seriously losing it," Jake said one evening over coffee. "It's a stuffed animal, not a horror movie villain." Sarah chimed in, shaking her head. "Maybe you should take a break from all this research crap. Sounds like it's messing with your head." But Mia stayed quiet, her usual bubbly demeanor replaced by something closer to unease. Finally, she leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Okay, fine. Let's say you're right. What do you think is happening?" "I don't know," I admitted, gripping my cup tightly. "But it feels like she's watching me. Like she knows things she shouldn't." Mia frowned, glancing around the cafe as if expecting someone or something to overhear us. "Just promise me one thing," she said after a pause. "If things get worse, tell me. Because honestly, this whole thing gives me the creeps." Her words stuck with me long after we parted ways. That night, I decided to test the limits of whatever was happening. I locked the plush toy in a drawer, determined to keep it out of sight and out of mind. For a while, it worked. The apartment felt quieter, less oppressive. But by morning, the drawer was open, and the toy was back on my bedside table, staring at me as if nothing had happened. Then came the messages. At first, they were subtle. A single word scrawled in pen on random pieces of paper scattered around my apartment. "Listen." Then entire sentences started appearing overnight. "Why are you afraid?" Followed by, "She can help you." None of it made sense, but each message sent my heart racing faster than the last. Desperate for answers, I reached out to Mia again, hoping she might have noticed something similar. But she didn't respond to my texts or calls. 2 days later, I saw her post on social media, a selfie with a caption that read, "Feeling so happy today." Except something about the photo felt off. Her smile looked forced, her eyes hollow. And sitting on the shelf behind her, barely visible in the background, was a Hello Kitty figurine. That's when things took a darker turn. The next day, Mia stopped responding to everyone. Her coworkers reported her missing after she failed to show up for work, and her apartment was found empty, save for a single item sitting neatly on her kitchen counter, a Hello Kitty keychain. There was no sign of a struggle, no evidence of foul play, just silence. When the police questioned me, I hesitated. How could I explain what I suspected without sounding insane? So I kept quiet, feeding them vague details about our last conversation and pretending I had no idea where she might be. But as soon as I got home, I pulled out my laptop and dove deeper into the rabbit hole. If Mia's disappearance was connected to the plush toy, and I was almost certain it was, I needed to figure out why. And fast. Because now, I wasn't just dealing with paranoia or strange coincidences. Now, I was dealing with something far worse. The creeping realization that Hello Kitty wasn't just watching me. She was waiting. Mia's disappearance sent me spiraling. I couldn't eat, sleep, or think about anything else. The plush toy sat on my desk now, mocking me with its silent stare. Every time I looked at it, I felt like I was being judged, weighed, and found wanting. But instead of throwing it away or burning it, something I briefly considered, I decided to dig deeper. If Hello Kitty was behind this, and I had no doubt she was, I needed to understand why, and how far her reach extended. The internet became my battlefield. Forums, Reddit threads, archived blog posts, I scoured them all, piecing together fragments of a story that seemed too absurd to believe, but impossible to ignore. What I uncovered chilled me to the bone. It wasn't just me. People all over the world were reporting strange occurrences tied to Hello Kitty products. Some claimed their toys moved on their own. Others swore they heard whispers coming from seemingly harmless merchandise. One user even posted screenshots of text messages allegedly received from an unknown number. She sees you. But the most disturbing theories came from a subreddit called r/Hidden Sanrio, a shadowy corner of the web dedicated to exposing what its members believed was a sinister conspiracy within Sanrio itself. According to these users, Hello Kitty wasn't just a marketing icon. She was a symbol, a vessel for something ancient and malevolent. They pointed to leaked documents supposedly written by disgruntled former employees, detailing rituals performed during the production process. Dolls weren't manufactured, they were imbued, each one carrying traces of whatever entity Sanrio served. One whistleblower account stood out. A man named Daniel, who claimed to have worked in quality control at a Sanrio factory in China, posted a lengthy confession before deleting his profile entirely. He described late-night ceremonies where workers would chant in languages he didn't recognize, placing finished dolls into crates marked with cryptic symbols. When asked why, his superiors simply told him, "It keeps them quiet," whatever that meant. Other posts hinted at darker implications. One user shared a scanned page from an old Japanese occult magazine, featuring an article titled "The Smile That Never Fades." Beneath grainy photos of vintage Hello Kitty merchandise were paragraphs discussing yaka, malevolent spirits said to inhabit objects imbued with human emotion. The article argued that Hello Kitty's lack of a mouth wasn't symbolic of universality, as Sanrio claimed, but rather a deliberate design choice meant to trap negative energy inside her. Without a mouth, she couldn't release what she absorbed. Instead, she stored it, feeding off despair until it consumed her victims entirely. As I read through these accounts, my mind raced. Was Mia trapped somewhere? Had she become another victim of whatever force Hello Kitty represented? Or worse, was she still alive, caught in some kind of limbo between worlds? Then there were the connections to real-world disappearances. Several commenters linked Hello Kitty to cases of missing children and adults, citing eerie similarities in the evidence left behind. One post included a photograph taken in 1997, a young girl holding a Hello Kitty doll, smiling brightly despite the sadness in her eyes. Beneath the image was a caption, "Missing since 1997. Last seen clutching this doll." Another commenter added, "My cousin vanished under similar circumstances. Same doll, same smile." These stories weren't isolated incidents. They formed a pattern. A chilling, undeniable pattern that led back to Hello Kitty every single time. And yet, no one talked about it openly. Not really. Sure, urban legends circulated online, but mainstream media never touched them. Even when people disappeared, leaving behind only Hello Kitty merchandise as clues, authorities dismissed the connection as coincidence. That's when I realized something terrifying. We weren't supposed to know. If you've ever seen a Hello Kitty product act strangely, leave a comment below. Seriously, because the more I researched, the more convinced I became that I wasn't alone. There were others like me, people who'd stumbled onto this truth and refused to look away. But the deeper I went, the stronger the warnings became. Dozens of posts urged readers to stop digging. "You don't want to wake her," one commenter wrote. Another added, "Some secrets are better left buried." Their fear was contagious. I started noticing things I hadn't before, subtle shifts in behavior among friends and family. Moments where conversations stopped abruptly when I entered the room. Had they noticed something? Were they trying to protect me or warn me? And then I found it, buried deep within a thread titled "Creepiest Things Found About Sanrio Products," was a link to a private server hosting classified documents. The password was hidden in plain sight. "She's watching." My hands trembled as I typed it in, unsure of what I'd find. What appeared next made my blood run cold. It was a photo album labeled "Case Files." Dozens of images filled the screen, each one accompanied by captions detailing dates, locations, and circumstances surrounding various disappearances. Most featured Hello Kitty merchandise prominently placed near the victims' last known whereabouts. But one picture stood out above the rest. A child holding a Hello Kitty doll, staring directly into the camera. Beneath it, the caption read, "Missing since 1997. I froze, staring at the date beneath the image. It matched the year I was born. Suddenly, the room felt smaller, heavier. The air thickened, pressing against my chest until I could barely breathe. As I closed the browser window, I swore I heard a faint whisper behind me. "She knows." When I turned around, the plush toy was sitting closer than before, its bow slightly askew. For the first time, I thought I saw movement in its glassy eyes, a flicker of recognition or hunger. By now, sleep was a distant memory. Every time I closed my eyes, she was there waiting, watching. It wasn't just paranoia anymore, it was reality. The plush toy had become a constant presence in my life, and no matter what I did, it always came back. Locked drawers, check. Trash bags, double check. Even burning the damn thing didn't work, at least not permanently. Because every time I thought I'd finally gotten rid of her, she returned, smiling that same hollow smile. But here's the thing about obsession. It sharpens your mind, makes you see patterns where others see chaos. And as I continued researching and surviving, I began to notice certain rules. Guidelines, if you will, for how Hello Kitty operated. Turns out, happiness isn't just a warm gun, it's also kryptonite to a certain blank-faced icon. She thrives on emptiness, loneliness, despair. Places devoid of genuine emotion are her playgrounds. That's why she shows up in thrift stores, forgotten corners of basements, abandoned houses, anywhere people have stopped caring. And then there's the invitation rule, or so I called it. For all her power, she can't enter a home uninvited. Not physically, anyway. But once you let her in, even unknowingly, you're fair game. That realization hit me like a freight train. All those years ago, when I picked up that plush toy at the thrift store, I hadn't just brought her home. I'd invited her into my life, into my soul. The more I learned, the angrier I got. Angry at myself for being stupid enough to fall for it. Angry at Sanrio for creating her. Angry at the universe for letting something like her exist in the first place. But anger doesn't solve problems, it creates them. Especially when you're dealing with entities that feed off negative emotions. One night, after another round of fruitless research, I decided to test the limits of these rules. If happiness repelled her, then maybe I could weaponize it. I blasted upbeat music through my apartment, danced around like an idiot, and forced myself to laugh until my sides hurt. At first, it seemed to work. The lights stayed steady, the whispers stopped, and the plush toy remained eerily still on the couch. Victory, right. Wrong. The next morning, I woke up to find her sitting on my chest, her tiny body pressing down on me like a lead weight. Her bow was crooked again, and her glassy eyes reflected the pale sunlight streaming through my window. For a split second, I swore I saw movement in her pupils, a flicker of amusement, maybe even triumph. Then she tilted her head slightly, as if to say, "Nice try." That's when things escalated. Encounters became more frequent, more invasive. Once, I caught her perched on the edge of my bathtub while I showered, staring silently as steam filled the room. Another time, I found her lying face down on my keyboard, surrounded by gibberish text. "She's watching, you know, she sees, stop running." Each incident left me more shaken than the last, but it wasn't until I tried destroying her that things truly spiraled out of control. I started small, a pair of scissors, a lighter, anything I could get my hands on. But no matter what I did, she always came back. One particularly desperate evening, I drove her out to a remote field, doused her in gasoline, and set her ablaze. Watching the flames consume her gave me a fleeting sense of satisfaction. Until I got home and found her sitting on my bed, completely unscathed, her bow slightly singed, but otherwise intact. "You've got to be fucking kidding me," I muttered, collapsing onto the floor. Her silence was deafening. It was during one of these failed attempts that I stumbled across a Reddit thread titled, "What Happens When You Fight Back?" Most posts were vague warnings, urging readers to stop before it was too late. But one comment stood out. A user named Silent Observer wrote, "She plays games. Always has, always will. The harder you fight, the stronger she gets. Your best bet is to figure out what she wants and give it to her." Great advice, except for one problem. I had no idea what she wanted, so I kept digging, piecing together fragments from other sources. Some claimed she fed on fear, using it to grow stronger over time. Others argued she collected souls, storing them inside her hollow body like some kind of twisted piggy bank. Whatever the truth, one thing was clear. She wasn't going anywhere. Not unless I made her leave. Which brings us to the confrontation scene. It happened late one night, after weeks of escalating tension. I'd barricaded myself in my bedroom, convinced that if I stayed awake long enough, I could outlast her. Spoiler alert, I couldn't. Around 3 a.m., I heard footsteps outside my door. Slow, deliberate, each step echoing through the empty apartment. My heart pounded as I gripped a baseball bat, ready to defend myself against whatever or whoever was coming for me. Then the doorknob turned. I swung the bat blindly, shouting curses into the darkness. But instead of hitting flesh or bone, it connected with something soft. Too soft. When I turned on the light, I froze. The plush toy lay crumpled on the floor, its stuffing spilling out onto the carpet. Except it wasn't stuffing. It was hair, human hair. And then I heard it, the faintest whisper, barely audible but unmistakable. "You shouldn't have done that." Before I could react, the room went dark. Completely, utterly dark. Not the kind of darkness you experience when you turn off the lights, but the kind that swallows everything whole. Even sound disappeared, leaving me trapped in a void so complete it felt like drowning. When the lights came back on, the plush toy was gone. For a moment, I allowed myself to hope. Maybe I won. Maybe she was finally gone for good. But then I noticed something new. Something I hadn't seen before. On the wall above my bed, written in what looked like chalk dust, were 3 words. "She knows you." And beneath them, scrawled in shaky handwriting, was a name. Mind. It started with the smell. A cloying sweetness, like cotton candy left too long in the sun, rotting under its own weight. It filled the apartment until it was impossible to breathe without tasting it, clinging to my skin and clothes like a second layer I couldn't peel off. Then came the sounds, faint at first, almost imperceptible. the scrape of tiny feet across hardwood floors, the rustle of fabric that shouldn't move on its own, and beneath it all, a low hum vibrating somewhere deep in my chest, as if the air itself were alive and mocking me. I tried to leave, grabbed my keys, shoved my phone into my pocket, and bolted for the door. But when I turned the knob, it wouldn't budge. No matter how hard I pulled or twisted, the door stayed locked, even though I hadn't set the deadbolt. Panic clawed at my throat as I stumbled backward, scanning the room for some explanation, some way out. My eyes landed on the mirror hanging by the entrance. At first, nothing seemed wrong. Just my reflection staring back, wide-eyed and pale, until I blinked. She was there, standing behind me, her blank face inches from mine, her bow perfectly centered on her head. Except she wasn't just standing, she was smiling. Not the stiff, lifeless grin plastered across merchandise worldwide, but something real, something cruel. Her cheeks curved upward unnaturally, stretching far beyond what should be possible, until her mouth opened wider than any human jaw could allow. And inside, nothing, just darkness. I screamed, spinning around to face her, but the apartment was empty. The plush toy still sat where I'd last seen it, on the edge of my bed, unmoving. Yet I could feel her presence everywhere, in the flickering lights, the oppressive silence, the cold sweat dripping down my spine. She wasn't just an object anymore. She was alive, alive and feeding. How many times have you smiled without meaning it? The question echoed in my mind, unbidden and relentless. How often had I forced a grin through pain or fear, pretending everything was fine when it was? Was that why she chose me? Because I fit her criteria so perfectly? Or was it something else entirely? Desperation took over. If the front door wouldn't open, maybe the fire escape would. I threw open the window, shattering the lock in my haste, and scrambled onto the ledge. The city stretched below me, neon lights blurring together into streaks of color against the black sky. For a moment, freedom felt within reach. Then I heard it, a soft giggle, high-pitched and childlike, drifting up from somewhere behind me. "Don't go," she whispered, her voice impossibly close despite the emptiness of the night. "We're having so much fun." I whirled around, nearly losing my balance. There was no one there, just the wind tugging at my hair and the distant wail of sirens fading into static. But then I saw her again in the reflection of the glass behind me. Only this time, she wasn't alone. Dozens of Hello Kitties crowded the surface, their bows tilted slightly askew, their bodies contorted into unnatural poses. Their mouths gaped open, revealing rows of jagged teeth that shouldn't exist. They weren't smiling, they were laughing. Laughing at me. My legs gave out, sending me crashing back into the apartment. The impact jarred something loose inside me, a memory, sharp and vivid, slicing through the haze of terror. Mia's face flashed before my eyes, her hollow expression in that final selfie hauntingly clear. She hadn't disappeared. She'd been consumed. Her despair, her loneliness, her fear, all of it fed into the void that Hello Kitty represented. And now, I realized with dawning horror, I was next. The walls began to shift, rippling like water disturbed by rain. Colors bled together, blending into shades I couldn't name, while shapes twisted and warped around me. Furniture dissolved into shadowy outlines, leaving only the plush toy sitting in the center of the chaos. Its once pristine exterior was fraying now, threads unraveling to reveal patches of smooth, porcelain-like skin beneath. When it moved, it didn't walk, it floated, gliding toward me with an eerie grace that made my stomach churn. "You invited me," it said, its voice layered with countless others, each tone more menacing than the last. "You let me in. I didn't know," I shouted, scrambling backward until my back hit the wall. "I didn't understand, but you do now." It tilted its head, studying me with those glassy eyes. And yet, here we are. I wanted to argue, to beg, to scream, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I stared at her, searching for some sign of mercy, some flicker of humanity buried beneath the facade. All I found was emptiness, an endless void that stretched deeper than anything I'd ever imagined. Then she reached out, her tiny hand brushing against my cheek. Her touch was ice cold, freezing my skin on contact. My vision blurred, colors swirling together until everything faded except for her face. Those blank eyes locked onto mine, pulling me closer until I felt myself falling not forward, but inward, into her. And that's when I saw it. Me, reflected in her gaze, staring back with a smile carved into my lips. Except it wasn't mine. It was hers, hollow, endless, perfect. When I finally blinked, the world snapped back into focus. The apartment was quiet again, the oppressive energy gone. For a moment, I thought it was over, that I'd somehow survived. But when I looked in the mirror, I knew better. There she was, smiling back at me, without a mouth. After that night, I stopped sleeping. Not because I was afraid, though I was, but because I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her, smiling, waiting. The reflection in the mirror never changed, no matter how many times I tried to wash my face or look away. It wasn't me anymore, or maybe it never had been. I wrote about what happened next on a blog post titled "The Smile That Never Ends." At first, I didn't expect anyone to read it, but within hours, comments flooded in. Some were skeptical, calling me paranoid or delusional. Others shared their own stories, accounts of missing friends, strange coincidences, and unsettling encounters with Hello Kitty merchandise. One commenter even mentioned Mia by name, claiming they'd seen her photo online years ago, holding that same doll from the background of her last selfie. Then there were the warnings. "You shouldn't have posted this," one user wrote. Another added, "She doesn't like being talked about." Beneath those messages were strings of emojis, a series of smiling faces with no mouths. Hundreds of them, scrolling endlessly until the page froze. When I refreshed, the comments were gone. All except one. "Is your Hello Kitty watching you right now?" That's when I realized something terrifying. This wasn't over. It would never be over. She wasn't just haunting me, she was spreading growing stronger with every story shared, every fear acknowledged. And now, thanks to me, she had an audience. If you've made it this far, you probably think I'm crazy. Maybe I am. But ask yourself this: have you ever felt like you were being watched? Like someone or something knew your secrets before you did? If so, leave a comment below. Share your story, because silence is exactly what she wants. Before I go, I need to tell you one more thing. Remember Mia? Turns out her cousin wasn't lying. He sent me a message after reading my post, attaching a photo of his sister as a child, clutching a Hello Kitty plush toy. Same bow, same blank stare, same year scrawled beneath it, 1997. The same year I was born. So here's my final question. How many of us are connected? How many of us are already part of her game? Remember,